So I set out looking for this experience on all the social media, and what I came across was Broken Arrow Events. And I checked out their Instagram, checked out their YouTube, and it seemed like exactly the kind of thing that I wanted to do. So a year later, I went to it, and this is the experience that I had at Broken Arrow Events Operation Green Lightning in 2025. To begin, about a week before this event, I decided that I was going to volunteer as a RTO, which is a radio telephone operator. At that point in time, the radio that would have been carried was the PRC-25 or the PRC-77, which was the slightly upgraded version. Externally, you could not tell the difference unless it was marked so. Upon arrival, we helped set up the tent that Squad 1-1 set up in. 1-1 is the squad that I was assigned to, and that is 1st Platoon, 1st Squad. So the evening of the first day was our Christmas in Vietnam event, and that was set Christmas Day 1970. For this event, I brought a ladder that had been engraved with the 173rd Airborne patch and a 1968 dated neckerchief. In return, I ended up with a U.S. government use mug, like a coffee cup, and a piece of a World War II parachute canopy, like the Pavin would have worn, and sometimes the GIs would have made little scarves and such out of it as well. Along with this came 2 U.S. government used pens in black ink, which I ended up using later in the event. Some of the guys that are over it ended up playing some acoustic Christmas songs and also some songs of the period.
I want to know, have you ever seen the rain?
So we all sang together like Frosty the Snowman and Rudolph, which was very fun. And then we played a few games. We did a little relay with some candy canes, and then we did a game where we would guess each other's character, and that was very fun as well. So we had the cards we stuck to our foreheads with a name on it, and we had to figure out who we were. Once we got back to the tent, we had the hardest time getting to sleep. We'd had all this fun today, and then we laid there and hoped that we would fall asleep. Unfortunately, I was one of the people snoring, but I slept pretty good. I'm sorry, Squad 1-1. I slept pretty good that night. So the next morning we woke up, which was Thursday real time, but in universe was the New Year's baseball game. We got up and we went out to the field, and we had to march it down because the grass was very tall, and I did pretty decent. I am not the athletic type, but I never struck out. Ended up eating 2 times there, one dinner, and then the following breakfast the next day. Both of those were excellent. I wish I knew what LT put in the boot up eggs because they were phenomenal, and I still think about them a week later. So that evening we did some training. We planned out what we were going to be taking in our rucks for the next day. And they got with me and finally said, hey, you're going to be the RTO, and tomorrow morning we're going to have a very, very fast crash course on what you're going to be doing. So the next day we get up and we do our hydration formation. There is nothing like trying to finish off a whole quart of water in full sun while everybody waits on you. It is a very unique experience, and it's definitely an immersive one. I hope that I don't have to do that ever again, but I'm really looking forward to next year, so I unfortunately will have to do it again. So after we had our hydration formation and we figured out what everyone was going to be doing, I went to the officer's tent and they assigned me the radio that I would be using. So at the comm tent, they showed me very quickly the operation, how I was going to use the radio, any kind of basic troubleshooting that I would need. Altogether, it was about 10 minutes of information. Afterwards, they drove me and the other RTO out about half a mile in a really cool restored mutt Jeep, and we did a comm check to make sure that the radio would pick up with base. So once we returned, we got on most of our gear and we hiked out something like a mile, and that's when I finally got to experience being an RTO in Vietnam.
That Firebird's going to have to refuel, so he'll be breaking.
On this hike, we crossed a stream or two. It was mostly ankle deep water, wasn't anything very strenuous, but about halfway through that hike, we ended up hitting contact from Pavin, and I laid down as quick as I could, because there's a whole radio backpack on. So I got down as quick as I could and I returned fire. I knew what direction it was coming from, but I never saw the Pavin force. And that was honestly one of the most terrifying things, is knowing that you were being shot at and they could see you, but you could not see them. And that is how it remained the rest of the event. So upon returning from this patrol, I realized that carrying the radio was a lot of work. My shoulders hurt, the back of my legs hurt. I had not trained for carrying the radio. I had done all kinds of training for rucking and for specifically just carrying the M1956 web gear. I was totally comfortable with that, but I was not used to the extra 30 pounds. So once I got back, I might have asked for a replacement, and no one else wanted to do it. So I ended up re-volunteering to do the thing that I had already volunteered to do. So that night we did our first RON, which is Remain Overnight, and that was a very interesting experience also. During that first patrol, I got a little taste of what being an RTO was. I started to pick up on some of the lingo, and I was enjoying it as much as you can enjoy carrying a heavy thing. During this RON, we hiked out about twice as far, I would say. We ended up going through some very swampy ground. It was definitely the immersive Vietnam experience. I remember cutting through this really swampy area where mud was probably up to the top of my boot, pushing all this tall grass to the side, and hoping that the other side of the bank was as close as I thought it was going to be. I got to our RON side, and there were several rock walls that we set up against. I found a little place over to one side where there was a few rocks that kind of made what looked like a couch, and I put my bedroll that I'd made in between those. So what I slept on that night was my poncho with my whoopee inside of that, and I just rolled up one of my tops and made a pillow, and I just curled up inside this little Ranger roll. And my radio stayed at my feet, so I could get up at any point in the night, turn it on, and call in. Once it got dark, it got a lot more interesting. So the only people that were attacked by Pavin on that first RON were people that had gone out that evening and came back just before dark. That I knew that something was going to happen, but it never did. So around 10 o'clock, I called in on my radio for the last time and let them know that Boxer 6 Romeo was calling it quits for the night and that I would talk to them the next morning. So that night it got pretty cold. It got down about mid-50s, and honestly, that whoopee came in clutch. So I knew at that point that I was going to need something more than just my whoopee and the poncho, because it was going to be cold at night. So once I shivered all night and peed once an hour on the hour, I finally got a little bit of sleep, and then the next morning we got up, we all ate a little bit of breakfast, which I had some piece of an MRE. I don't even recall what it was. I think it was some kind of trail mix or something like that, and we hiked back into our base. Upon returning to the base, we all did a formation, and they did a very, very brief after-action report, and then we went and were able to sleep for about an hour. So at that point, they decided they were going to send out another small patrol. And during this patrol, Squad 1-1, which is my squad, was sent out to do a little bit of recon, and I was affixed to them as a radio operator. We finally got to our first TRP, which is Tactical Reference Point, and we set up shop. Something happened to our communication. I was not receiving any kind of calls or anything from base. So between the time that we got to this TRP point and the time we were supposed to reach the second TRP point, we missed a lot of info. At some point, there was supposed to have been a transmission that another unit had inserted into the field and was directly below our position. I did not receive that, and it was never cleared with me. I didn't get any of that, and we were blind. Or deaf, I should say. Deaf. So, between our position, which is Squad 1-1, and then 2nd Platoon, there was a Pavan force had got in between us and was about to ambush 2nd Platoon. So once they started attacking 2nd Platoon, Squad 1-1 leapt into action, and we started firing downhill. One of the point men in Squad 1-1 had apparently identified himself as Squad 1-1 and was fired upon, and there was a little bit of a friendly fire, and we did take out the Pavan force that had gotten into our crossfire, and we took a little bit of intel from them, but we did take a few casualties. From there, the squad lead from the 2nd Platoon squad and my own squad, Squad 1-1, got together and had a little powwow over what could have been done differently. What I didn't expect was for them to play out a little bit of drama there and have some harsh words, and it was a little bit of a played out fight. And it was honestly really cool. It was very cinematic. It felt like something that came out of a movie. At this point, we got ready for our second remain overnight, and I was still carrying the radio at this point. So for this particular RON, we went to Hill 1114, and this was almost straight up climb. So we were going in kind of a switchback. We would go up onto a level and then onto the next level and then cutting back and forth. And finally we reached an almost level place there at the top of Hill 1114. And it was at that point in time that the Pavan force made contact with us, and there were grenades thrown. There were several casualties we took immediately, and it was very hectic. Everything just kind of kicked off at once, and I was honestly a little in panic mode. I got down behind a tree as quick as I could. This being airsoft, my rifle battery ended up dying, so I only got 2 shots out, and then I called in as quick as I could and let the communication center know that we had taken contact. Once 1st and 2nd platoons had fanned out and taken the high ground, they killed what Pavan forces were there and took 1 prisoner. So instead of staying in that area, we backed away from Hill 1114 and we made a little sort of a base camp at the bottom of that hill before it flattened out. And that was a lot of fun because we mostly made these little wooden walls, sort of like these Civil War fences you see where they kind of interlock. Those are the places we ended up sleeping. I made a little bit of a wall there around myself and the radio so that I was covered up that night. And I learned from the night before, so I ended up buying a sleep shirt at the PX, which is like a very fine wool shirt, and I also brought my wool blanket from my cot. It was right around 8:30 we started taking fire from the Pavan, and we never could get a read on where they were. They just kept shooting, and then they would disappear for a bit, or they would move positions and then they'd shoot some more. And when it started getting dark, I started to panic a little bit because you can't see anything on top of the mountain. Like it's completely dark, everything's canopied over. You don't want to use your flashlight because you immediately become a target. Everybody can see exactly where you are. We were given a challenge sign that we could use if we needed to get outside the perimeter to use the bathroom, but it got very hot very quick. So I have to give a shout out to the guys that were playing Pavin because they were very good. There were about 6 of them, but you would have thought that there was at least 30. It was just super intense that Pavin was able to move that close in that amount of time, and we never knew they were there. Until there was some shooting, we wouldn't have even known to shoot back as far as that goes because it was completely black. There was very little moonlight. It wasn't a full moon or anything, and none of us were using our flashlights. So the next morning, about 7 o'clock, I get up and I eat my little MRE accessory pieces. I think that morning was cranberries that had been dehydrated, and I got ready for the long way home. And this was the last leg of the event, and it was very intense from there. So we were coming off of Hill 1114, and the whole way down we were finding tripwires, and we would have to halt and make sure that all those were cleared out of the area. We ended up crossing another stream, and this one was significantly larger. It was probably 15 feet across or something, and at the deepest point was probably mid-calf. And on the other side of this stream was a hill that went straight up and then plateaued out into a field. And they said, that is the field we need to be in. Once we get to the top, everybody get on line. We're going to walk through that field and then push Pavin all the way through. So as we get onto this hill, we come into contact again. I'm trying to call in that we've hit contact and I'm shooting, and this is the first point in several days that I actually even saw a Pavin soldier. That was super intense. Like I didn't expect to be shooting honestly as a radio operator. Like I carried my rifle the whole time, but I did not expect that. I know in the historical context and in real life that you would have, you would have had to. But I didn't expect to do that. And I ended up doing the first round of Buddy Medic on 2 guys that had also been hit there. And then we proceeded to go up the hill, and at the very edge of the woods, we all got online with each other. Somebody finally came and put my tourniquet on. I got back up, did what radio I could, and then from there, we chased the Pavin through the woods. We got into the brush with them and chased them all the way to the bottom of the field below LZ English, which is our base camp. The other RTO called in some artillery and finished them off. And then we finished up our weekend with an after action report right there. We talked about what could have been done better. We talked about what we enjoyed. The new people got to put their 2 cents worth in. And it was just a really good time. If you wake up and you say to yourself, I want to do something that's more than reenacting, but I want to do something that's not just airsoft, Broken Arrow events is what you want to do. Because you are going to live in the field, you're going to eat in the field, you're going to sleep under a tent, you're going to run patrols, you're going to carry a radio, you're going to shoot some guys, you're going to get shot at, you're going to go through creeks, you're going to go through swamps. It's going to be awesome. So everything that I possibly could have imagined doing in Vietnam, I pretty much did there. So altogether, if you want an immersive Vietnam experience and you've never done anything like this, I would suggest doing this.